y'all, welcome back for another edition of I'm Moving to North Carolina, Now What? This is part 2 of our inspections editions. We are here with Lee Warner with Warner Inspections. If you hadn't had the opportunity to go back and listen to part 1, go back on YouTube or anywhere you find your podcast and catch up on general inspections and how that relates to your due diligence process. We also tapped a little bit on new construction, so if you're looking to buy a new home, that could be some crucial information before we get down into these extras in today's episode. So I have Lee Warner back with us again for this second part. So Lee, tell us again a little bit about you and your business, just in case folks haven't gone back to part 1.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you for having us, guys. So Warner Inspections was born out of my passion for real estate and protecting people. We are full service, and by full service, it's kind of the weeds that we're going to dive into today. So far as, no, we don't do just home inspections. We do radon testing, mold testing, septic inspections, well inspections, lead inspections, you name it. We're going to try to look at it and put our eyes on it and have somewhat of an understanding of it to better inform you as the consumer about what it is you're buying here in North Carolina.
So it's really important that when you're trying to hire an inspector that you're getting someone to this caliber who is able to do all the things, right? Because then that person's able to look at the home from 30,000 square feet. They're not just doing it the one little snapshot, and then you're having to take these puzzle pieces and kind of match them together. They're kind of able to flow it a little bit more, right?
Yep.
Okay. So something that he just kind of tapped into, and we're going to get into this today. This one's a little gross and dirty, so spoiler alert, we're going to talk about septic systems. So first of all, a lot of folks coming from other states have no idea what a septic system is. So can you explain it in layman's terms?
Layman's terms. If you flush the toilet and you're not connected to public utilities, like for the city water and city sewer, you're more than likely going to have some type of on-site wastewater facility. There's hundreds of different types, styles, permitting, many different rules for every different area across the state. But essentially, it's a waste treatment for each individual property.
Yes. So city sewer and water, guys. If it's not that, you probably have septic or potentially well, and we'll get into wells and stuff in just a second. So septic inspections. How do I even know that it's on septic? Like, not just the fact that MLS says septic, but are there some key signs maybe in the yard that I can look for that should indicate to me that maybe the information in MLS was wrong? Because we've seen that happen.
We've seen that happen. It could be listed it has sewer, but there's a septic tank in the yard, or listed as septic, and we find out when we get there to do a septic inspection there's no tank because it's connected to sewer. Things like that pop up all the time. Typically, anything from like 1999 and newer, that we're required to be within 6 inches of grade, the tank itself, below ground, or have access risers. So if you see big round green circles or black circles or other type of concrete structure sticking up out of the ground, you see 2 of them within about 5 feet of each other, you might want to start thinking that could be a septic tank. Another good telltale sign is, the grass is always greener on the other side. You can actually see lines through the nitrification fields a lot of times in aerial view from like Google Maps.
Okay.
You can see the lines in the yard before you ever show up to the property.
So if I have a septic tank and I'm trying to have maintenance, right? How often do I get it pumped, and what type of things do not go in a septic system?
Well, you should pump. We'll keep this one PG for what shouldn't go in the septic tank. You want to pump it every 3 to 5 years. Typically, we want to, depend on how many people are living in the home. If you've got 12 relatives living with you all the time, maybe you want to do it maybe 2 years or so, because we don't want to overload the system where we're having solids reach our nitrification field. Solids stay in the tank. That's why they get pumped out. And solids being what you flush down the toilet, toilet paper, and using going number 1 and number 2. Anything other than that, maybe a little bit of cleaning products when you're cleaning your home, washing dishes, washing laundry soaps, things like that, and a little bit of Rid-X or other treatment is okay, but just not in excess. We don't want to see, like our big one is Charmin toilet paper. You might want to be mindful of the toilet paper that people use because they make sure it says septic safe on the package at the grocery store. Because it's how it breaks down, because it's actually a living organism. The probiotics that are here become there, and they exacerbate, and it's kind of the nicest way to put it. But no, like feminine products, toothbrushes, hairbrushes, toys, marbles, rocks, we find them all the time.
Oh, I'm sure you do. So I hate to ask this question, but how do I know when the septic system has like a break in it or there's a breakdown in the process?
The smell is usually the first indicator.
Okay.
Usually if there's a failing system, you'll see stuff bubbling up in the yard.
Mm-hmm.
If it smells funky and it's kind of makes the yard really saturated, we may think the drain lines are getting clogged or oversaturated, which really points back to a lot of times to a leaky toilet. If the leakage, too much water is introduced at one time,
Mm-hmm.
it can cause those. It gives you the warning signs. It's usually the smell.
Yeah. So we talk about the septic tank, the septic field, like the repair field and all of the things that come with it. So let's say I'm evaluating a home and I pull the septic permit. Something that we often talk to clients about is if they want to add an additional structure, extend a driveway pad, or just drive their four-wheelers, let's say, through their yard. I mean, we see lots of different variations of this. What are some suggestions that you might have of things that maybe they really shouldn't do, especially when the septic is right there below the soil?
Well, we definitely don't want to drive over any component of the system. So I have found on a lot of occasions where the drain field is under the driveway, especially on older homes. You know, we'll just pull up to the front door, we'll be fine. Well, what they're doing is they're harming their system. For thinking of future expansions, right? We want to see, is there enough yard space where a potential expansion could be done? A lot of that's done through each individual county.
Yeah.
We would contact the environmental health department. They would come out and do an evaluation for us to see whether this system can be expanded if you wanted to have an addition, which is a lot better to know before buying the house, before buying the home, and then realizing, oh, we can't add that bedroom that we wanted to add because we have no room.
Yeah.
Or the driveway configuration doesn't quite work.
So let's move away from septic systems, right? Because I feel like we could talk all day about getting knee deep, right, in septic systems. So some other inspections that we have here are pest inspections.
Yes.
So what kind of critters do we have in North Carolina? Because a lot of people call it a termite inspection. It's not just termites.
It's not a termite inspection. Whenever we do pest inspections, we'll call them pests. We're looking for wood-destroying pests, like carpenter bees is a wood-destroying, lovely bumblebees. You see them flying all around, chewing
they look
your
like
house
bees
up.
on steroids.
And they chew your house up.
Yeah, exactly.
Termites as well. We have subterranean. There's several different varieties and species of termites, subterranean termites that will come up through the ground. That's exactly subterranean, underground. They come up and make tunnels up on your home.
Okay.
And they eat. Their primary source of nutrients is moist, damp wood that we find in humid North Carolina. Is we have crawl spaces that are usually moist and damp and full of wood because that's usually how the home is constructed. So it's the prime conditions are there for subterranean termites, and we have older homes. You'll have powder post beetles and other fun critters that were actually in the wood before the home was ever built. And when the tree was cut and they were milled, then the bugs actually escaped after the fact. There's usually this like 60s, 70s older homes like that.
Yeah.
But subterranean termites, pest, we do overall like if we find a whole bunch of spiders. It's not wood destroying, but we'd make a note saying, hey, you might want to tame these a little bit.
Yeah, have them treated.
That's right.
So something to keep in mind too, guys, when we're talking about the termite or pest inspections is that if you have a certain type of loan product, you don't always pay for that inspection. So that's something to be mindful of when you're talking to your lender, for example, like a VA loan. They're not going to pay for the pest inspection. It actually can typically fall on the seller. So if I'm thinking about a crawl space, because I do feel like this is something that while they exist elsewhere in the United States, right? Basements typically seems to be used interchangeably, even though basement, typically you can actually go in it, do things, finish it out. Crawl space, you don't want to have stuff stored down there. Nope. I'm sure you see paint cans and other flammable stuff or just random junk in crawl spaces.
Cardboard boxes and scrap woods from the husband's Saturday evening hobbies. You know, I'll just throw the scrap pallets over here. We'll make a Christmas tree later. Kind of all the stuff gets stored in the crawl space. That's wood destroying insect food. It's bait. If I've got a board laying on the floor I can get to easily, it's a lot better for me to eat that than it does to climb up, masonry walls and whatnot in these crawl spaces. Some of them can get really tight too. We've been in some ones where I could slide on my belly and my head was hitting the floor joist. So we get really tight spots. But we do that to find those areas where that one corner that I couldn't get to is where potential problems will be.
The water leak or anything else that's going to cause a lot more damage. So let's talk about, since we talked about crawl spaces, pest inspections, septic, another big one in North Carolina, radon. Let's define that for the people. What is radon?
Radon, if you guys aren't familiar, is the number one leading cause, this is per the EPA, this is the number one leading cause of lung cancer in America for non-smokers. It's an inert gas that comes up, or not really inert, it's a poison gas, essentially, that's coming up out of the ground, usually from the decay of granite and bedrock and other types of stone. It's a radioactive decay. And that emits through the air. We're breathing radon right here in the studio. And we don't know. It's invisible. You can't smell it, can't taste it. Taste it. We test for it because you can't taste it. We set a monitor, and it gives you an hourly reading for at least 48 hours. And we take the law of averages. And that average, if it's over 4.0 picocuries per liter over that time period, the EPA requires remediation, which is a vacuum pump that we put either in under the slab or in a crawl space to essentially draw that poisonous air out from under the home. There's no way to eliminate it completely. You can't get rid of it, but we want to make sure that the levels that we're living in our home for years on end, it's the time in the high levels that causes the illnesses. So if we can limit the levels, we can enjoy our homes for as long as we want.
Yeah, so Lee and I have actually had a couple of occasions where we found radon and people were none the wiser in one situation. And again, these can happen in random pockets, guys. Your neighbor may not have anything. You might have something pretty high. I think the highest that I've seen was 28 in the one. That
was the record that we inspected for you. It was 28. When we think that's the recommended level is 4.0. We were 28.
It was 7 excessive. Times.
And the next door neighbor, they were in the teens, which was still highly elevated. Personally, my house failed at 6.6, and my neighbor next door had a 2.0. Direct next door neighbors. So it all depends on what's underneath your home and how your home is constructed. Yeah. So furthermore, get a radon test. It's worth it.
So let's talk about the fact that even after you live in the home, should you retest?
I would. We usually recommend if we get somewhat elevated levels over 1.5, we would say, hey, every 3 to 5 years, do another test because it can change. And it can change. We could set two machines in the same house and we'll have 2 different readings because it varies based on the barometric pressure outside. If it's really stormy and rainy, our levels will be higher. Drier times, it'll be lower. Things like that.
Yeah, and we've actually, on the buyer side, seen this very same thing happen where the seller had for years been living in a home that had radon. It popped high for the buyers because they did that inspection, and unfortunately the seller had no idea. In that case, they were able to mitigate it and take care of it before the buyers moved in. So, Lee, this is kind of just awesome information for folks to know that there are so many different things they need to inspect, they need to check out before they close on that home. These are also things, guys, that we can use through negotiations because obviously anything that's discovered becomes a material fact for that potential seller. So we do want to make sure that while it is an as-is purchase, that we're getting all the information because buyers can walk away for any or no reason at all. So you want to have all the info in your back pocket. So Lee Warner with Warner Inspections, his information will be in the description of this video so that you can reach out to him directly with any questions or to gain his services. Remember, they have online scheduling on their website. Please like, follow, and share this episode with someone you know that you feel like could benefit from this info. We are on podcasts everywhere as well as YouTube. I'm Laura Richardson with Relevate. All right, y'all, thank you for joining us today. Be sure to like, share, and follow us on Instagram as well as YouTube. We're also on Apple Podcasts. Again, I'm Laura Richardson with Relevate.